is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Okay, today we have another watch from NTH that was generously lent in for review by a friend of the channel. I've also reviewed the Barracuda, which I'll pop in the upper right hand corner if you want to check out that review. Now, I've always wanted to check out one of these DevilRays, and I was not disappointed when I finally got my hands on it. However, before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So price and availability. As of this recording, this colorway doesn't look like it's available, but there are some of the other colorways on WatchGauge. Now, I'm not affiliated with that website, but they do carry many NTH watches, and the price of this watch is $550. So starting with the case, it's 43 millimeters in diameter. It's 46 millimeters lug to lug, but with these protruding end links, the true lug to lug is more like 52 millimeters. It's 14.5 millimeters thick, but about a full millimeter of that is this largely domed sapphire crystal, and then it has a 22 millimeter lug width opening. Now the case is quite interesting. It's sort of a mix between a Seiko Turtle and a Doxa. And while it is a large case at 43 millimeters, this case channels some of that Seiko case magic by having a relatively short lug to lug. It also wears extremely low and flat across the wrist and is deceptively comfortable. The sides of the case are brushed with a large high polished bevel that runs the entire length of the case. Then the finishing returns to brushing and bellies back towards the case back. This is an extremely pleasing case shape overall. The bracelet starts at 22 millimeters before tapering down to 20 millimeters. It then jumps back up to 23 millimeters at the clasp. The end links are solid, and the articulation of the bracelet across the back of the watch and between the links is fantastic, both of which translate to a more comfortable bracelet overall. The outer links are brushed, while the inner links are brushed with 3 raised high polish portions. The clasp is one commonly found on micro-brand watches and is a good choice here as it helps act as a counterweight to the head of the watch. It has a safety catch with a double push deployant and is fully milled. It also has plenty of micro precisions, so finding a good fit won't be an issue. Finally, sizing is accomplished with screw links, which is very convenient. The design of this bracelet is interesting and I find it very comfortable. The screw and case back helps provide a whopping 500 meters of water resistance. It also has this massive ray that is raised and polished around the edges with a deep relief backdrop. While you will rarely see this design on the case back, it is a playful feature and I always appreciate a fun case back like this. This watch is powered by the Seiko NH38. This is a hacking, hand-winding, 21,600 vibration per hour movement with a 42-hour power reserve and a stated accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds a day, but I usually find they run closer to plus or minus 10 seconds a day. This is also a no-date movement, which eliminates what would be a ghost position on this no-date watch, so very good attention to detail. The 8mm crown is nicely knurled with the same saw blade style as the bezel and is high polish, which is a nice contrast to the case. It is also signed with the NTH logo, and that logo is lumed, which is really cool. The threading and unthreading action is very smooth, and operating the watch via this large crown is a pleasure. The watch uses a double domed sapphire crystal, which has been treated with anti-reflective coating, which will reduce glare on the crystal and make it easier to see the dial. The crystal is a touch proud of the bezel at the edge and has a very large dome. It's always nice to see a sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. The 120 click unidirectional bezel has an interesting saw blade edge that is finished in high polish, which is a nice contrast to the case. It is also mostly shrouded by the case, save for the area at 12 and 6. However, despite this, it's very easy to turn and has a very nice action. It does settle back ever so slightly, but everything lines up perfectly. The dual track stainless steel insert is a nod to the Doxa bezel, but in this case has a more useful set of the standard die bezel on the inner gray portion and a 12-hour track on the outer black portion. Therefore, you can use this bezel to track the passage of time, as well as a rudimentary GMT. The bezel is also fully loomed. Starting at the edge of the dial is a gray chapter ring with a fun set of colors along the top. This section is not actually that visible head on, but you will notice it when viewing the watch from an angle. Before handling this watch, I thought this section of the chapter ring would be very distracting. However, after spending time with this watch, I can report that it is not. The chapter ring slopes down towards the sunburst silverish gray dial and adds a lot of depth to the dial overall. The NTH logo resides at 12 with DevilRay and 500 meters resist at 6. This is the perfect amount of text and is not distracting. Finally, there are small black lines extending from each of the applied indices. These applied indices are cut into the chapter ring, a detail that adds a lot of visual interest to the dial. They are high polish and filled with lume with a double index of 12. The hour hand is slightly gabled and all high polish and filled with lume. The minute hand is edged in orange and contrasts nicely against the rest of the dial and makes it easy to quickly read the time. The minute hand is also plenty long, reaching almost all the way to the chapter ring. Finally, the second hand has what my wife refers to as a marshmallow on a stick design and has an orange tip. And this watch is fully lumed, including both tracks of that bezel, and you can see it's almost putting the Seiko monster to shame. So serious lume on this watch. And popping it on the Timegrapher, we're getting about plus 12 seconds a day with the dial up, healthy amplitude, and 0 beat error. And with the crown up, we're running about plus 10 seconds a day. You do see a drop in amplitude as the balance wheel is fighting gravity and a little bit of beat error. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Now this is a big watch. I do think I kind of barely pull it off, but it is extremely comfortable and wears low and snug against the wrist. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, this is a really well-designed micro-brand watch that is definitely inspired by a number of other watches, but has a distinct style all of its own. It also has all the specs you could basically ever want, except perhaps for a ceramic bezel. It's extremely comfortable on wrist, despite being a larger watch, and I think I can actually pull it off, despite not usually wearing watches this large. As for the cons, the protruding end links make the true lug-to-lug 52mm, and I think this watch would wear even better with end links that don't protrude. The dual track bezel looks great and is useful, but the inner track is a bit difficult to read with the white on gray in certain lighting conditions. Finally, I love the orange minute hand, but I can't help but feel the shape is slightly out of place on the overall design of this watch. So at $550, I think the major downside on this watch is the NH38 movement. NTH does use Miyota 9000 series movements in some of their other watches, and I would love to see one utilized here. Now, for comparables, you could for about $400 pick up a Seiko King Turtle, which this watch takes inspiration from and is very similar spec-wise and even has a ceramic bezel. On the opposite end, you could, for about 4 times the price, go with a Doxa, which is another watch this one takes inspiration from. But while I haven't handled a Doxa, I actually think I would take the NTH here, especially considering the price difference. So there you have it, the NTH DevilRay. What do you guys think about this watch? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.